All right, hello. Welcome, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Can I just see a raise of hands who is developing for MetaQuest already? If you can raise your hands. Okay, most of the room for people watching this later. Is there anyone new that is trying to find out if they want to develop for Quest or not? We see a few hands. Okay, we got a few people in the room. That's great. And can I see a raise of hands of who has been developing for more than 5 years? XR or Quest? Most of the audience. Amazing. So I think many of you remember the days that developing for XR used to be hard, right? From prototyping to testing to performance, all the way to shipping your experience. The good news is that we spent the last few years listening to the feedback from the developer community and solving the most important pain points. All the way from our store and how it operates to frameworks, SDKs, developer tools, there's a big leap on how easy it is now to build for MetaQuest, specifically for Unity developers like you. So no matter if you're a small studio that has been building for XR for the past years, or if you're a newcomer to the space looking to get into Quest development for the first time, I want to talk to you today about why the time is now to build for Quest. And we've focused a lot on making it simple, fast, and exciting to build for XR. Now, what we're going to go through today is a little bit of information of some of the key trends that we're seeing from developers like you. David, my colleague here, will talk more about how to ship better experiences. And then I'm going to go back and talk a little bit more about the resources available to you, including funding, which I know it's top of mind for many developers in the space. Then we're going to invite our friend David from Resolution Games to give you some insights of how to go about build your first mixed reality experience. Does that sound good? My name is Mike Lamprinos. I am a product manager with Reality Labs at Meta. And let's talk about building for mixed reality. Let's kick off with the state of the Meta Horizon ecosystem. The Meta Horizon store continues to grow and be successful for developers, with over $2 billion have been spent on games and apps. The Meta Horizon store has over 500 dedicated 3D spatial experiences and 1,000 more in App Lab today. With MetaQuest 3, we're seeing this momentum accelerating. Users are spending more time, more money, and trying new types of content thanks to the device. Now, earlier this year, we announced the evolution of MetaQuest Store to Meta Horizon Store. And you'll probably be thinking, why is that a big deal? Well, what this means is that any developer who meets basic technical content and privacy requirements can now ship their apps on the platform. So we did this change because we fundamentally believe developers and users are better served by an open ecosystem. And we've built a new set of partnerships to further expand and support Horizon OS. Now, what's really interesting is the evolution of the type of content that we see developers building on the platform. Over the last decade, developers have created exceptional gaming experience on MetaQuest. I'm sure some of you have contributed to that. What's really interesting is that over the last few years, we have seen new categories of experiences adjusted to games emerge, whether it is working out in FitXR or meditating in Trip, or pursuing your passion like learning music with Piano Vision, or traveling with Bring. It is really inspiring to see teams and startups being born on Quest and scaling with the platform. Now, what these experiences have in common are a few patterns. They're mainly built with mixed reality and other key MetaQuest capabilities. They have interactions that feel intuitive to the user, like some of them are controller-free, use natural hand gestures. And very important, we're seeing a lot of these experiences being social by default. An interesting, still small trend that we're seeing is early signals of teams using AI to make the experience more fun and useful to consumers. Now, each of these pillars by itself is interesting, right? But together, They create powerful experiences that integrate into the daily lifestyle of the consumer. I want to zoom in a little bit on mixed reality and talk for a second of what makes mixed reality content really stand out. Mixed reality gives you the unique ability to push the boundaries in two areas. The first one is immersion, the sense of presence, when you genuinely feel you're somewhere else and you're interacting with the game world in a very intuitive way. And second is adaptability, the potential for gameplay mechanics that feel personalized and customizable for each player, leading to completely new content opportunities. And what's interesting about mixed reality specifically is that we've been working really hard during the last year on improving mixed reality features like pass-through on MetaQuest 3 with each software update. I think it's fair to say that our teams have a long history of improving and iterating based on your feedback to make the most out of the hardware available to consumers. And the results are pretty amazing. From V66 onwards, you can see the differences on pass-through related improvements, specifically reducing the amount of visual distortion on pass-through for MetaQuest 3. If you tried MetaQuest 3 last year and you haven't updated your software, I think you should give it a try. The mixed reality improvements specifically have been really, really interesting. Now, let's change gears and talk a little bit about how to get started building for Quest. You have two different paths and the choice is always yours. If you want to take the advantage of the latest capabilities and tools available to you, some of which we will talk about today, you can start by downloading the Meta XR all-in-one SDK from the Unity Asset Store. If you have already downloaded, make sure you're on the latest version to get the latest of the tools and the capabilities that we have available. Now, if you're familiar or simply prefer developing with Unity's AR Foundation, we have been updating and adding more mixed reality features during the past year. If anyone was on the talk just before this one, they went a lot deeper on AR Foundation as a path. If that's something that you're interested in, I invite you to watch the session afterwards. Now, some resources to help you get started and build faster, right? If you go down the path of the Meta XR all-in-one SDK. First of all, building blocks, which help you get started quickly by simply drag and dropping different features and capabilities into your scenes. What building blocks are prefabs, so they work with everything else you already know in Unity, and they come pre-configured already. We've been releasing new and improved building blocks in the past year, and now we have more than 30 available to you. Some of the more exciting ones are the multiplayer building blocks, which David is going to go deeper in a bit. Another starting point can be the reference apps and showcases like Cryptid Cabinet and Discover, which combine multiple mixed reality features to showcase best practices on interesting use cases like collocation. Collocation and comp presence are some of the use cases that we're seeing surfacing from the community. And if you want to explore towards newer use cases, I would definitely suggest getting your team together and seeing how you can build something completely new for users with collocation and comp presence in mind. Last but not least, MR motifs, which are MR mechanics that are surfacing from the dev community that we put out as samples, so you don't have to start from a blank page and recreate all the mechanics at the same time. This is relatively new. We released in the last few months. If you're building or thinking of building for mixed reality, have a look. They're fantastic. Now, once you get started, I want to talk a little bit about some of the tools we have to help you iterate and debug a lot faster than before. So Meta XR Simulator, we spent most of the past year improving and introducing new features. It helps you debug right from your device, so you don't have to put your headset on and off. And some of the unique features that David is going to go through in a little bit are mixed reality synthetic rooms. So you can test your mixed reality experience in different types of rooms. We also have performance tools available for you, like OVR Metrics, Perfetto, and RenderDog, to make sure that you optimize the performance of your game as much as possible. And last but not least, a new tool that we just released called Immersive Debugger, which is available from V68 onwards, that helps you debug when you're inside the headset and iterate very fast. You can see Beat Saber here using it to test some of their menus. It's available from V68, and yet another reason to always be on the latest SDA version. Now, I'm going to pass it to David, who will go deeper on how to make the most out of tools, SDKs, and how to ship better experiences. Okay.
Thanks, Mike. Hey, everybody. My name is David. I manage the developer technology team at Meta. So we do SDKs, tools, and samples, work very closely with Mike's team. Some of you may know me from previous Unites. We talked a lot about graphics and performance stuff, but this time let's talk a little bit about mixed reality. So as Mike mentioned, we have a lot of capabilities in the headset that can help you drive engagement and keep people coming back to your app and help you make more money. But it's also new technology, and not a lot of people know how to use it right away. So we've done a good amount of exploration with it. We've got a few ideas about how you could use it, and we've also, been hearing a lot from the community about what the possibilities are. So you're fundamentally working with the Quest 3, which is twice as much GPU horsepower as Quest 2. There's a lot of other upgrades around the system, including much better pass-through, color pass-through compared to Quest 2, and much better hand tracking and controller vibration and so forth. So fundamentally, it's an Android device powered with a Qualcomm processor. Here are some of the capabilities. But as you can imagine, fitting into this can be a challenge, and it certainly is for us, to get all the system software running at performance. So one of the things that developers often run into is navigating those constraints. We've also, been migrating to Vulkan in partnership with Unity. That is giving Unity a lot more control over exactly how the rendering occurs on the device and a lot more opportunities to optimize the driver. We've gotten a lot of performance wins, and there's a lot more to come. And I should mention that OpenXR is the way that we expose the device's capabilities to Unity and other engines, as well as native. You can, how many people have worked with our VR API, the predecessor to OpenXR? Okay, good. I hope none of you, because it's just a lot harder than using Unity. But basically, the device exposes a compositor, a bunch of tracking technologies, and we expose that all through kind of an OpenGL-like API with an extension capability. And so our features go through a journey of kind of beta testing and maturation as they, become core, and then Unity, can take a long-term dependency on them. But the cool thing about OpenXR is that it's also cross-industry. And although Unity, also has a cross-industry interface that, you generally can just change build targets and have a lot of the functionality work, OpenXR makes that easier to do on a more fine-grained level. So you can do things like use pass-through the same way on all devices instead of having bespoke per-vendor APIs within Unity. And as Andrew Borel mentioned in the great roadmap talk just now, Quest is now going to be a build target in Unity in the near future. So this allows you to do things like have very different asset conditioning for your VR build targets or for your Quest build targets as opposed to your PC VR targets. You can do things like tessellate meshes differently, have different LODs on your geometry and textures, or you can run entirely different shader variants and so forth much more easily. A lot of developers have to do this themselves today, and it's non-trivial, so this should take a little bit of work off your plate. So as Mike mentioned, XR Simulator is our kind of mock OpenXR implementation, which runs on PC primarily. And what this lets you do is quickly iterate on your device. We noticed that a lot of developers encounter friction putting on the headset and taking it off. And so we're trying to help you, either stay on the PC and iterate there as many times as possible before donning the headset, or, and I'll talk about this in a moment, there are ways we can help you keep the headset on and iterate quickly if you're noodling with shader settings or constants or changing, physics interpenetration or things like that. These are all things you can do, quickly rerunning, reconfiguring, and then leaving the headset on so you get more shots on goal. But as I mentioned, XR Simulator is an OpenXR implementation. And the cool thing about it is that it supports basically all of the headset's features. And they're all implemented in a way that you can control on your desktop. And you can do things like automated testing. You can test a wider variety of environments through our synthetic environment server. You can also capture and replay in the near future input, so your QA team can run through a problematic flow. You can get a trace of that, and then you can play it back later and even do that in a script. So then you can have systematic repro cases, for example. We also give you the ability to use a real Quest device using the controllers to provide input to XR Simulator, so you can, get those hard to reproduce 6DoF interactions without actually putting the headset on. So there's a lot of ways we tailor the experience there to make the desktop, feel as fast and easy to work with as the headset where we can. But it's no substitute for Link. If you put the headset on, if you hit play in Unity and you're using Link, you're going to have a more representative experience of your app. I should also mention that we provide a number of those synthetic environments. So if you want to test, a dorm room, or you want to test, outdoors, or you want to test, a library, or there's a bunch of different environments with different lighting conditions and things like that. You can see how the pass-through will look with your content, or how, different aspects of the space layout will impact your app. If you have kind of furniture placement or something like that, you can see how it'll really work. And we have a lot of best practices. We're all navigating this space together. And we try to provide our learnings to you through the samples and motifs, which I'll get into more detail on later. So SDKs have been evolving pretty quickly at Meta. We've added a bunch of functionality to the device. Quest 3 really made the hardware much more robust at pass-through and scene understanding. And so we have a couple of APIs now that we really think will drive engagement in your app. Pass-through, scene API, and spatial anchors are kind of the big three. But we also have the ability to do more fine-grained depth testing with the real environment. So you can, for example, have a non-player character walk in front of your real couch or walk behind it, and all the occlusion works the way you would expect on a roughly per pixel level. We also have more advanced audio, so you can do things like diffraction and occlusion around different objects in your environment. There's also switching between the hands and controllers. So if you have a game like ping pong where you need to pinch the ball and drop it, that's what we're I think showing here. We also have a lot of other mechanics you can enable that way, and examples of how to do it. And to the extent that the industry is aligned on these things, they're making their way into AR Foundation, which Unity has been moving pretty quickly as well. So there are features that you can find on ARKit and AR Core, Magic Leap, and so on, that Unity has provided cross-vendor abstractions for, and we are very supportive of that. We want you to be able to make revenue on as many XR devices as possible, and we understand that shipping to multiple stores is something you're going to do, so we want to make that as easy as possible. But we also are moving things forward with our device, and we have to, allow Unity time to think about how that's going to be exposed in a cross-vendor way. So not all of the features of our headset are represented yet, but we try to minimize the difference between, our bespoke SDK and AR Foundation. As Mike mentioned, the building blocks are a great way to get started with development. Whether you're new to development in general or just new to XR, these provide kind of bite-sized samples as well as working black box implementations of different functionality you may want in your app. So we show, for example, how to use Photon with our platform SDK, which is kind of our set of online services. So I noticed that there were a couple of Oculus Meta Quest developers in the audience. How many of you have used our platform SDK for online services? Okay, that's a low number. So we have bespoke online services that allow you to travel around the metaverse with your friends, or jump into experiences and have voice over IP, or have leaderboards and share achievements with each other. But we don't want to reinvent the wheel with things like matchmaking, peer-to-peer networking, and so on. So we've provided examples, one of which is this set of building blocks, to show you how to use those normal features you probably already have an implementation of from Photon Fusion, or you may be using Network Game Object or other mechanisms, and you can now interoperate that with our specific services. But here are some things you could do with it. So the point of our platform SDK is to allow you to be socially co-present with other people. So VR is pretty compelling when you feel like you're in another place, but it's even more compelling when it feels like the people you care about are there with you. And that's the point of the online services we provide. We have, identity, we have graph, we have, the connectivity between environments and so on that are exposed to these services. Some of you may not have encountered our mixed reality utility kit yet, but this also helps get kind of deeper with some of the unique mixed reality features in the headset. So those, as I mentioned, pass through, scene API, and spatial anchors. This one's kind of focusing on that scene aspect of the thing. So we have things like UV mapping of your surroundings. There's a global mesh that we compute and provide to you through this SDK. So if you're used to working on like HoloLens, they have that kind of a mesh as well. You may be used to having UVs computed for you by your modeling tool and stuff. You can condition the data a little bit better through this. And we also have found that a lot of interactions are more compelling when they're integrated with your environment. So we have a full sample exhibiting this, like Cryptic Cabinet, where there's actually an escape room where we'll place all the puzzles and things around your real environment and try to make them look consistent with the rest of their surroundings. So we have algorithms that'll help compute that that you can take or leave, or you can modify to your heart's content. And there's a number of other features in the mixed reality utility kit that can help you get started, help frame the problem, or help you learn from our experience. I also want to talk a little bit more about staying in VR. So if you're working on your desktop, you get the interaction looking pretty good on a 2D screen, or maybe you're iterating with Link every time, and then you get to a point where you need a representative performance profile, so you have to deploy an APK. Well, now you're in the headset and you don't want to take it off. That's a little tricky. You can use Quest Link and bring up remote desktop. You can use the full Unity GUI in there. But the DPI is a little bit lower, and the interactions are a little bit higher friction doing that. And so many developers end up building repeatedly these APKs and pushing them to device, donning and doffing the headset, and it's very high friction. So the goal here with Immersive Debugger is to allow you to make one APK, push it to your headset, and then noodle a bunch of changes that you aren't going to get right the first time. Physics settings, lighting, you might have other graphics properties that just require a lot of tuning. So like our Beat Saber team has used this, much like the Unity inspector. You get like a panel that has a number of sliders on it. You annotate properties in your code just like you would with the inspector. It's actually got some kind of optimized for VR UX, so you can kind of work a little bit more naturally and have a higher bandwidth kind of iteration. But then it's easy to just strip it all out and get it out of the way when you're done. Okay, let's change gears a little bit and talk about performance. So, it was mentioned in the roadmap session that mobile GPUs are often tiled architecture, and what that means is there's a power-saving architecture where a limited working set is used at each stage of rendering to try to minimize power draw and maximize cache locality. And so, typically mobile GPUs, starting with like PowerVR, have been, used to doing things in kind of chunks. That makes it much harder to do like whole frame buffer seeks. If you're doing like, SSAO post-processing, for example, you may be raycasting across that frame buffer and sampling into distant regions of it. And that's something mobile GPUs have never been particularly good at. So there are a lot of other constraints like that, that mobile GPUs impose. And when you're using them for VR, there's a lot of temptation to do sampling across that frame buffer. So we always work with Unity and their graphics team to make that better for you by default. So let's talk a little bit about some of the things you don't even need to worry about because we already took care of them for you. So the first thing to know about a VR headset is that it's a computational display. And it's essentially, making the field of view what your real field of view should be, physically with that thing on your face. And the visibility of each of your eyes is asymmetric, with respect to like your body. Although each of the eyes, actually each of the eyes is asymmetric in terms of its visibility. It toes out a little bit, and so. We actually foveate differently across the tiled memory, and that causes a lot of cache, missing. So we have some techniques we've implemented to try to reduce that, so that when we do multi-view, which is essentially like simultaneously rendering both eyes at once, we can make sure that they both hit in the same tiles. So the same primitives are being rendered in the same tiles on both sides. So we've worked extensively with Qualcomm to make this possible, and what we do is we render a symmetric frustum for each eye, and then we do a bunch of masking and padding and try to reduce the memory footprint back to what it would be if we had used the original asymmetric FRUSTA. And by doing that, we can simultaneously have the low bandwidth we originally had and have more cache locality with the tiling. So that's a little bit different than the way it works with traditional mobile rendering, where we can do things like deferred plus and have a lot more G-buffer memory floating around on a per tile basis. This is more like coping with tiling and still getting the power benefits of that for VR. But the key distinction is that VR has kind of an insatiable demand for more pixels per second. Your user's going to notice the higher you push that render scale. And so, yeah, some of the techniques we use, result in really visible resolution improvements. We also have a very active power management system in the headset, and we've recently added features to enable the resolution to scale up when that's not being saturated. So if you have a desired resolution, but you're willing to drop down to a low resolution if the system is saturated, you can set that, and then when the system isn't heavily loaded, for example, if the scene complexity drops for a while, you can get resolution bumps that are pretty noticeable without ever dropping frames. Another thing we've done for you that you don't need to worry about, that I just thought I'd tell you because it's cool, is AppSW. So AppSW is a technology where or Unity for You gives us motion vectors. And as you're moving your head around or as animations are moving the content on the screen around, the differences between frames on a per pixel level are being computed and sent to us as velocity vectors in another texture. And we extrapolate those velocity vectors and allow Unity to skip every other frame, thereby giving you 70% more GPU, or saving you giving you about 70% of an additional, essentially, reducing your GPU overhead by almost half. So this was a big performance win from the beginning, but we saw some artifacts before when we originally shipped this. We've recently made some big improvements to the algorithm that extrapolates those motion vectors, and it's now using meshing and a much more temporally stable technique to provide things like you can do sword fighting in like Assassin's Creed, which uses this technology in Unity. And you can see that things behind it no longer get warped. So if you tried it before and you had image artifacts, try it again, it's a lot better. Another thing we've been doing is, Camouflage, one of our studios at Meta, recently announced that they're making a Unity-based Batman Arkham Shadow game. This is using Vulkan subpasses, actually, to do tone mapping and a number of other really cool effects, filmic, color effects and soft shadows, among other things. So this is all stuff you can do in Unity, and yeah, there's a lot more console or PC type rendering now that's becoming possible, because instead of having separate actual passes for each of these operations, we're able to consolidate them down into a single effective pass and use Vulkan subpasses to minimize round trips with the CPU. So does that all get you excited? I think there's a lot you can do with our headset, and there's a lot of cool immersion you can achieve. And what I really want to make sure you're aware of is we have a lot of resources to help you. We have tools. We try to make it good by default, and you can also reach out to us. We're really opening up our store and giving you more access so that you can get your creative vision out.
Perfect.
Back to you, Mike.
Yes, thank you, David. Loads of improvements. I'm here to talk a little bit about funding, right? And introduce the MetaQuest Lifestyle App Accelerator. Now, this is a brand new 6-month program for Quest developers to prototype new lifestyle applications with mixed reality, hands, and AI. We want to support teams who are interested in building fun and delightful consumer experiences with novel, engaging, and retentive mechanisms that leverage the unique capabilities of MetaQuest in emerging content categories, for example, arts, crafts and design, and fashion. So as we talked earlier, what we see with MetaQuest 3 is the momentum towards those new kinds of experience is already accelerating, right? And we're seeing experiences that help people do what they already love doing better, to level up their skills and connect with other over shared interests. Experiences that integrate into the daily habits of consumers and serve the rest of the family in addition to core gamers. We're seeing already teams prototype interesting ideas. We have a few around cooking plus AI, or how can you reimagine something like reading a book? And we have the accelerator. Basically, the accelerator provides three things here, right? Three resources to developers. First of all is dedicated seed stage funding to rapidly prototype your ideas as a small team for 6 months. Second is access to technical, product, and design resources to build your prototype. And third is a dedicated mentorship and coaching to build retentive experiences and successful businesses on MetaQuest. Now, we're not doing this alone. We're partnering with the world's best investors who are committed to our vision for mixed reality and virtual reality, and who have already backed founders and developers who are building for Quest. So the details. The applications are open until 15th of October. I'm going to get away so you can get the QR code if you're interested in applying. We're looking for fun consumer experiences in categories like the ones I've mentioned already: music, art, cooking, decoration, hobbies, generally interests that integrate into the life of consumers and people that want to build successful businesses on Quest. We want to hear from you and support your ideas, and we'll be on the Meta booth later if you have any questions. And yeah, applications are open until the 15th of October. Now, how can you start building with mixed reality? All of the tools and all of the improvements that we talked today. You can download the latest Meta XR all-in-one SDK. I think we're on version 69 by now, where you can find all of the tools that David and I have presented today: building blocks, project setup tool, Meta XR simulator, immersive debugger, all those tools that will help you get started and iterate a lot faster than before. And we're also supporting and adding new features on AR Foundation. We have a new developer website with a lot more resources coming in the next months. And yeah, that's it from us. Now we want to invite a very special guest on the stage, because I think it's really important for you guys to hear from some of the studios that they're on the forefront of mixed reality, that they're pushing the technology and finding new concepts and new ways to build engaging content. So I would love to invite David on stage from Resolution Games, who have built some amazing MR games. If you haven't tried them already, here's a video to see some of their titles. Have you guys tried any of these titles before? Some notes? Excellent. Welcome, David.
Hi, everyone.
Great to have you here.
Nice to be here. Yeah, so my name is David Filipe. I'm a Portuguese game developer. I'm currently based in Stockholm, Sweden. And now I'm engineering manager for Resolution Games. Yeah.
Excellent. Do you want to walk us through your journey so far? How long you've been with Resolution? Have you built for any non-VR platforms? Just your personal experience?
Yeah, I can talk a bit about that. So I started in XR like 7 years ago, and always worked with XR. Since university, I always had the appeal for it. Like I tried it in university, I think, the first time in a game jam. And ever since then, I've been super addicted to it. I think for me, it's like the being able to be inside the experience, like experience it firsthand. For me, is like very appealing. Yeah, I started in Lisbon on in a company that we did XR apps for healthcare, education, bit military, and yeah, then I transitioned to Resolution Games in Sweden, where I relocated, and now I worked many years with Demio, and now I'm working on a new project, but still supporting it with Demio. Demio is still my baby.
Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, in terms of Resolution, I can speak a bit about it. So at Resolution Games, we're a company of 100 plus people. We have our headquarters in Stockholm, Sweden, but we also have offices in Linköping, slightly south of Stockholm, and Austin, Texas. We've been the developers of Angry Birds VR, Isle of Pigs, Cookout, Racket Club, Ultimax, Demio Battles, and a bunch of others. Sorry if I don't remember.
Do you have like a
everything.
little bit on the origin story? Like, how'd you guys get started?
Yeah, Resolution Games started in January 2015, which means in January we're going to be 10 years old. And we started from the beginning with VR. Our first title was Solitary Jester, I think for Oculus Go. I don't remember exactly. It was a long time ago. And I also wasn't there in the beginning. But yeah, that's basically it.
So why did you get into MR then? Is it just the next logical step?
I think like for us, we love VR. The immersion that you have from VR is the best. But there's a lot of users that also don't feel comfortable basically being totally immersed. Like sometimes people don't have a lot of space in their offices or rooms where they play. So having MR is the natural step. You have like some safety of actually seeing your environment, and we can actually do a lot of cool things with the environment around you, which is something that we love to do.
Yeah, so it's like a situational awareness thing a little
Exactly, exactly. For us, that's very important. Also, most of our games, I would say like 99% of our games are all multiplayer, social games. So for us, that social aspect is also super important, which in VR you can do a lot of, and now we're experimenting with MR. Yeah.
Excellent. And I think you touched a little bit already on the appeal of MR for a studio that gets VR, but you want to go a little bit deeper? Like, what suggestions do you have for devs here that might have some experience with VR or not, and trying to figure out how to find the fun with mixed reality?
Yeah. So yeah, mixed reality for any of us developers that have been used to VR, mixed reality is, again, a natural progression from it. There's a lot of things you can do, like having access to the room around you, objects, and you can build super cool experiments with that. Like, I think like the first one that is like the most obvious sometimes when you start working with MR is portals. All of a sudden you can extend someone's room infinitely, have things happening all around you, and that brings another level of immersion. Yeah, that's basically
Excellent.
it. Yeah.
And I know in the audience we have a few developers, teams that are coming maybe from mobile, console, desktop. Any advice for them if they're thinking of getting into XR, building their first project? Is there
Yeah,
anything with them?
I've worked also with consoles and mobile, and to be perfectly honest, I think nowadays, maybe not 5-7 years ago, but nowadays the transition is seamless, at least for me. I think we reached the point where if you have experience with consoles, it's completely translatable to XR. If you have experience with mobile, even better, like you're used to optimizing things. You used to care about draw calls and all of that. So it's a natural progression. I would think like nowadays, like with the documentation you have, with the samples you have, it's like super easy to enter it. Yeah.
Excellent.
What about like concept exploration? I heard a lot of ideas in there that like you must have had to really explore to find.
Yeah, I can tell a bit of a story like with Spatial Ops, one of our latest games. We have it in open beta since yesterday or something like that, and we're going to release it fully by the end of the year. So Spatial Ops is a co-located game. So again, multiplayer, co-location. We also have single-player campaign with portals, again. But the co-location part of it was what really inspired us. So in the beginning of Spatial Ops, I was working with a prototype. I only worked with it very briefly on the prototype stage. This is like a bit of a stupid story nowadays, but we started with Cube. When Quest released the pass-through, we started experimenting with it, and we noticed that you just spawn a Unity cube, and you leave it, and you can walk very far away, you come back, the cube is still there. And that sounds something super simple, but it was very transformative for us back then. So from there, we started working on our own solution for co-location. So we started using a very silly idea, which was we used the Quest box. So you would put your Quest on the box, you'd click a button, it would be synced, and then someone else would put it on the same box and click a button, it would be synced. So all of them would have that location as the initial one. And then we can do co-location experience. Obviously, from time you've been playing it, you would drift a bit, but it worked in the beginning. Nowadays, you have spatial anchors that make it almost seamless. We can all share one spatial anchor, we are all synced, and it makes like an experience that for us, in the beginning, was super hard to develop. Now it's very easy for you to get into it. So again, I feel like starting it now, it's very much better than before.
You had co-location before we did.
Yeah, but was it the best solution? It worked.
I have not heard of that one before, like a physical Quest box
Yeah.
as an anchor. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly. Like it worked pretty well as long as you don't move the box.
Cool. What about performance? Like you mentioned that, it's the same language as consoles and PC, but did you have to like spend another 80% of your development time like getting it to a 10x smaller budget?
Yeah, so in regards to performance, obviously, if you are used to working with mobile, you already have a lot of like knowledge about performance. But I think nowadays, again, it's much better. I think in terms of performance, like for us, the way we work with is you usually have the OVR metrics always on. Like it's super easy, it's an APK you install on your Quests and you always have the metrics on. And we do that in all of our Quests and we use that throughout development because it helps you seeing like, okay, there's something here that I haven't noticed. Because sometimes you have frame drops and you're distracted, there's a lot of things happening, you don't understand them, but then you have something that alerts you. So that has been a great tool.
So you kind of sit with that active all the time, and if something crops up, do you like drop into another tool? Like, do you have like a decision tree? You're like, oh, if it's a GPU problem, I'm going to use Frame Debugger? Or what?
Yeah, exactly. So if it is, again, a GPU problem, we go to Frame Debugger. If it's like we usually have the profiler on as well, so we try to see what's happening and we profile very often. That's, again, one thing that we do might sound very obvious, but use the profiler in Unity often. It's fantastic to see a lot of things that might happen. So for example, in Demio, we were having some frame drops and we didn't really understand why. We do constant performance passes. And in one of those performance passes, we were really not understanding what was going on. We just analyzed it and we noticed on the profiler that we had like, I don't know, like 50 megabytes or something in memory, which was just our Asian fonts. And then the thing is like, the game was not even, I didn't choose any Asian language to play. So we're having that issue with no reason. So currently we're actually working with Unity and Demio to have the addressables. Because again, like those types of situations with addressables are easily fixed. We have that one. We also had one which is like you have cosmetics. We had all the cosmetics loaded in memory, which is like you don't really need that. But yeah, it's more or less that. Like I can give some tips. Like if you're starting a new project, I would recommend starting again with URP. URP has great support, for example, for true foveated rendering. If you're using a device that has eye tracking, like the Quest Pro, where it can actually like just foveate like what the person is not actually looking at.
Who knows what foveation is?
Fantastic.
Not
Great,
everyone.
I didn't see it.
It's basically like higher resolution where you're seeing the most in the middle of the screen, and like towards the periphery, it starts dropping the resolution to save GPU.
Exactly. And with true foveated rendering, that center of the screen doesn't need to be the center, is exactly where you're looking at. So we can foveate everything else. You don't really notice it. But you get like huge performance gains with that. Yeah, URP. Another thing, this is not performance, but I really want to mention this because it's fantastic and I love it. It's the Aptic Designer, Meta Aptic Designer. I don't know if you use it. Please do. It's fantastic. For me, it's like a toy. Like now, our games are starting to have like haptics everywhere. It's fantastic.
Yeah, you can now have like a game designer do your haptics,
Yep.
where it's more of like an audio authoring workflow now, but it's like a parametric curve editor,
Yep.
and it's like just a hop away from being in the Unity editor, but then you can make your clips and then you can like put them in Unity and wire them up.
Yeah,
So
and-
you're preferring that workflow?
Yeah, I love that workflow, and especially because you can just like grab your audios, like for example, sound effects, and you just pass them through it, and with little to no like adjustment, you can bring them to Unity, and all of a sudden, like yeah, fantastic haptics, especially on the Quest 3. It's very, very good. And also, you guys made it like it was super good of you to also make it like it's agnostic. So you generate a clip that you can use in other platforms and all that, which is
Oh yeah, we used to have to like tailor your haptic effects for each of our devices because they have slightly different resonant frequencies and actuators and so forth, but that abstracts that for you.
yeah. Yeah, and I think that's it. Sorry, I'm rambling a bit.
No, that's super interesting. Haptic Studio and the Haptics SDK. That's a good one, and that's a fun one, right?
Yeah, and also as you mentioned, the XR simulator. Right now, our pipeline is usually we play an editor with a link cable, and because we have multiplayer games, we do constant builds and we do constant play tests. Again, it's a bit hard when you need to test like 5 players or more.
Actually,
Yeah, but that's the part
we
that
just improved that.
yeah, exactly. That I was just gonna ask that because we're considering starting using the XR one, just for the fact that now you can actually import rooms. You can have like again rooms already set up for you, and you can actually. There's a lot of good features, but I wanted to ask like in terms of like multiplayer
Yeah.
and all of that. If you
Yeah, so XR Simulator can, take the place of Link in the case where you don't want to put the headset on. You can also run like 8 or 16 copies of it and like test multiple instances of your game all in XR. They all are using OpenXR actively and whatever your multiplayer solution is, as well as our platform SDK, and they can all be talking to each other. And you can drop in on any of those instances with Link. So if you have like 2 players doing a high five across a shard boundary and it like causes an issue in your back end, and you need to go in there with Link and see that like a palm tree was like not loaded properly, causing that somehow, then you can do that. And you can switch between the different instances.
yeah, it's way better than having like 4 sim links of Unity like running at the same time.
Yeah.
Yep.
Excellent. And one of the takeaways from what I heard from you today is, try the samples, try the showcases. You never really know when, inspiration and creativity, like where it will come from.
Exactly.
And for you, it came from the cube. Like, how should someone start like exploring MR?
Yeah, that's it. Like for me, like it's MR is a constant evolving thing, as we see today. It's like constantly getting improved. So I would, if you're starting a new project, just look at documentation, look at the Meta SDK. The Meta SDK always has like great samples for you to try on. Also, like you showed Dilmer. Dilmer has fantastic videos. Like, please look him up. And it's usually super updated, like new features. He has tutorials for that. Yeah, but my advice would be just like look at documentation, samples. Unity has also like great samples that do with you guys. Like so, that I think.
Excellent. Any like parting thoughts for the developers here? Anything that you want them to know, both for MR or for Resolution? I know you have a new title coming up.
Yeah, we have currently we're also working. We announced that we're working with Wizards of the Coast with D&D new game. We're releasing Special Ops by the end of the year. Yeah, I don't know.
Which is open for people to try, right?
Yeah, exactly.
If
It's
they
an
join
open
the
beta since yesterday, as I mentioned before, so you guys can join that. It's there's a lot of cool things there and cool experimental stuff there. So also give it a bit of like the benefit of the doubt.
Excellent.
Yep.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you for coming on stage, sharing your tips, your insights. I'm sure people found it useful. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And again, if you have any questions, you can just like ask me like afterwards, or you can like come everywhere. You can just like send me a message. We're always happy to help. We're also recruiting if you guys want to work with us. So yeah, that's it.
Excellent. That's pretty much from us. This feels like a whole new thing. We're going to stay here for any questions, if you have any. We also have a booth where you can try building something yourself with all the tools and the resources that we presented today. You'll be blown away by how fast you can build a multiplayer experience with some of the tools. Collocated multiplayer experience with some lightsabers, or some colors. It's pretty mind-blowing. You need to try it. We're going to be on the booth all day today and tomorrow. So drop by. And again, have a look on how to get started, especially if you're in your dev. The resources are available to you there today. The ecosystem has evolved massively. And yeah, we're really excited to see what you guys build. Thank you so much for coming. And yeah, looking forward to see what you create. Thank you.